You're watching Understanding Bigfoot. Why understand Bigfoot? Because we know they're real. Now, let's start Understanding Bigfoot with your host, Mike Scott.
Thank you, Sean Seaball, and welcome everybody to Understanding Bigfoot. Mike Scott with you, coming to you from Cape Girardeau, Missouri, the white city tonight of Cape Girardeau, Missouri. We've got about an inch of sleet on the ground and more falling. So it's a cold winter night. So time we release this, it'll still be winter. So warm yourself up and enjoy the program. Becky Pepper with us, Nacona, Texas. Y'all getting that sleet too, Becky?
Yes, it's a white here too.
I looked at. I mean, you're probably
Got
Dakota is
ice
probably about
here, though.
600 miles from Cape Girardeau, but I looked at the weather radar map, and it looked like the band was all the way back to Nacona from Cape to Nacona,
Yeah,
back there.
everything's shut down.
So our two guests
We don't
tonight.
have the trucks down here like you guys do.
Well, we don't. Southern Missouri is different than Northern Missouri. Northern Missouri, this be a
Okay.
piece of cake, but in Southern Missouri, everything shuts down um, over this stuff too. So we're shut down right now too. But yeah, but our two guests will get this stuff probably tomorrow or the next day. they're from Indiana. Just continue to go to the eastern direction. But we have Martin Lotsberg with us and LeRoy Nail. Now, Martin has got an interesting story we're going to talk about. And LeRoy, we're going to give him his acknowledgement. He's the director of the Indiana Bigfoot Research Association Facebook page. And we appreciate LeRoy for allowing us to put our programs on there when we release them. And that's, we get a lot of positive comments from folks in Indiana. And that's how we got a hold of Martin. And Sydney Kreider, who we had a recent show with, that's from Indiana, and different people like that. So, LeRoy, Martin, welcome to the program. We're glad you guys are here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Now, Martin reached out to me back in the summertime. And we're going to let Martin tell his story, but he started an adventure that very few people undertake. He set out to camp out in the woods for several straight weeks to try to figure this Sasquatch stuff out. And Martin, I'm going to start off with you, and I'm going to just say, tell us what got you thinking about doing that and how that whole experience got started.
Sure. Well, what got me thinking was listening to YouTube videos, and I don't know what happened. I couldn't get enough of it, and it wasn't really the plan to stay there for a long time, but it. Let's see. I think I spoke with you, Mike. Maybe I don't know if I spoke to LeRoy or you first, but you were two of the first people I spoke with about this.
I know we started communicating on this early on in your excursion, um, and LeRoy assisted you how? Because you knew LeRoy ran the page.
Yeah. Well, the real stuff was out in the field off the page.
Right.
um,
We know that.
yeah. Uh, yeah. Just do you want to say anything, LeRoy?
Well,
He's
Martin had come. We was having a small outing down in southern Indiana. It's really kind of right in the corner of Indiana, Kentucky, and Illinois,
Oh, okay.
right along the river down there. And Martin come down and met us down there, and we went out down there that night. And then I don't know. It was a few weeks later that he was traveling through Indianapolis, and he contacted me and said, "Hey, where can I go up here?
mm-hmm.
Where can I go in this area?" So I sent him out to an area and told him, I said, "Yeah, you might check this out,"
Mm-hmm.
knowing that I was sending him to a good area. in hopes that he might actually have something, encounter something.
Right.
And he did.
Mm-hmm.
He encountered something, I think, you first night, didn't you?
A lot the first night, yeah.
And then that's what made you just kind of ended up staying. And then the longer you stayed there, the more you got interested and the more you was trying to figure out. And
Mm-hmm.
like I said, I give hands down to him because staying out there, I will tell you that a lot of times that I would go out there and you'd pull up, Martin would be in the back of this campground in the very back corner of it. No lights, no nothing, no fire, and he's just sitting by a picnic table by himself in the middle of the night with
Wow.
and having a lot of activity going on around him. And this is how he spent the biggest part of his summer going clear up into the fall. And that's exactly why. And he learned a lot of their behavior. We learned some things from him from the time that he was staying out there, and learned some more of their behaviors. I was already aware of a lot of their behavior that they would do, um, from past experiences of being there. But Martin even experienced some more and learned some more. Um,
Mm-hmm.
like in the case that they do like to mess with campers. Am I right,
Oh
Martin?
yeah.
Yes, sir.
So,
Yes. Yeah.
Martin, tell us about that first night.
Oh boy, that first night. Well, I think soon after that first night, or maybe a little while after, I told Leroy if I would not have believed you if I told you what was going to happen. For me, I didn't know they existed. I'd heard a
Okay.
lot, and it was very convincing. Um, and I was definitely speaking to Leroy was one of the very first people I spoke with, and I realized I looked at him and he told me he's had experiences, and I thought this might actually be real. And at the same time, I just wanted to know, and so, well, I went to the campground and just started making a fire, and gosh, getting nervous thinking about it because it was getting dark, and then I just heard a big crash. Not a huge one, but I heard what I would think would be like a branch snapped and thrown on the ground. And I thought, wow. I was, I guess, informed enough to realize there's not a lot of things. That's probably a Sasquatch. Just
Yeah.
was my
Yeah.
impression. Then I heard what sounded like maybe a tree falling, uh, maybe 10 minutes later from a different direction. And then maybe 10 minutes later after that, I heard another sort of smaller break and crash on the ground. Not crazy, but just it was done by someone, if you know what I mean.
Right. They
Uh,
were they were shouting their presence in the area to you, one way or
yes.
the other.
That is, I'd done heavy research and I had been, uh, I wasn't sure what type of impression I had really about them at all. You know, do they want to kill me? I don't know. And but I'm trying to think of where I was that night with that. I mean, believe me, my heart was pounding.
Oh, I'm
And,
sure.
and this is where Edie comes in, who I was hoping she could be here because if she wasn't on Facebook Messenger that night, I don't think I would have stayed that night.
So you're contacting. So as you're dealing with this, and they're coming in, and you don't see them because it's dark, but pretty much you got a good idea what it is,
Yes,
and probably more than one of them, right?
absolutely more
Yeah.
than one.
And so you're okay. Get a hold of Edie. Help me
Yes.
out here, Edie.
Well, By the time and this is where I messaged her a lot, probably every day for a long time. And um, if I'm not mistaken, when I messaged her, I was hearing little stick cracks around and little noises. And I just sort of put two and two together and realized there's a few around me. It wasn't new news like people like Leroy and Edie, and I'd heard that when I went to Leroy, he laughed and said, "I told you it was a hot spot."
What do you expect, right? You
And,
asked for a place where they're at. He gave it to you. What do you expect?
do you
And
remember that, Leroy?
everything that he was experiencing, the in that spot, it's hard to believe how many trees will break, and you will see them. You will
Yeah.
see the tree break right in front of you, and you're kind of like, now what broke that? How
Mhm.
did that break? What caused it to break? Because
Yeah,
there's no wind, there's no nothing, and there's numerous ones. So everything that he was experiencing is what we knew that went on there. And the big thing about it is Edie had camped there for several years, not continuously 24/7, but she
right.
camped there at
Mhm.
least once a week and had done that for several years. So she was very aware of what their behavior was
Oh yeah,
when they would come in, kind of what they would do. And that's how she kept Martin there, because she'd say, "Yeah, this is what they're going to do."
Mhm.
And Martin would say, "Yeah, that's what they ended up doing."
That's what they
well,
did.
and after you've done that for a while, you start to realize kind of what the patterns are.
Mhm.
But on that very first night, you're trying to figure it out. You're not quite sure of the existence. You're just pretty sure there's something to this, but you don't know
Yeah.
for sure.
Mhm.
I'm going on almost 2 years doing the show, and then one of the earlier shows that I did a year and a half ago or so was with my friend Bill, and the title of the show is "Taunted and Greeted in Southeast Missouri." Well, his
Mm.
very first time, just like Martin, he's like, "I got to figure this stuff out once and for all. Who wants to camp with me?" Well, we're not camping out there in those woods with you. And he goes out by himself and camps. And the night ended with him firing 6 rounds out of his 45 into the air to clear his campground so he could
Mhm.
pack up and get out of there. And and
Mm.
thankfully nobody got hurt, including the Sasquatches. But the but that was hit. And then of course I didn't say and greet it because he's come back to camp again. I've gained the trust to camp with him. Think, okay, they're not really hurt, and we've had very many peaceful interactions at the campground since then. But so your first thing, and even though they're not being aggressive with you at this point, you're still okay. Am I getting into more of what I bargained for? it's,
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
so let's continue with your journey a little bit. How'd that progress as you camped there for several nights?
All right. Well, I I'm trying to I'm just thinking I don't know if it's significant or not, but I looking back realized I had experiences on two nights at least before this in different states.
Okay.
And um I can talk about that or not, but
Because go ahead.
I I'll just skip ahead to well, I'll just say what happened. I was just one night in Arkansas sitting on a picnic table and I heard footsteps behind me about 2 a.m., pitch black, one family at the end of the campground. It's primitive, no electricity, no lights. Uh, I did go there thinking, you know, be cool to experience Bigfoot and stuff like that. And I just froze. I completely froze. I mean, terror stricken. And in hindsight, I don't know how many months later, I realized those are the same footsteps that I've heard, months later.
Yeah.
And they were not common. I did not hear footsteps very often. I I think they choose to let you hear them or not, with like something like footsteps. And the other one was in Missouri at a campground, and all it was just midnight or so, just a huge break right across from my campsite. Uh, that's all it was. I did the same thing and completely froze in terror. Didn't know. I just froze. I didn't even know if I should wind my window up because I was sitting in my car. That's all that was. And I guess you could say maybe that was a bear, but you know, maybe not. And so the journey, well, you mentioned the guy firing the shots. I had
Right,
been listening to How to Hunt for a long time, just all the time, like hours every day because I drove a lot.
right,
And I'd gotten the kind of idea that, don't bother with like a gun or, there's this guy, the way he portrays it is they are so far, they outclass us so much. And he's a skilled hunter from the Canadian mountains that
right,
he claims so I didn't even bother. I didn't have, I had a knife. It was obviously not to protect myself from them, but,
right.
and so you asked about how the journey, trying to think. Uh, it really, for me, just I sat at my campsite. I didn't go anywhere. I didn't ever shine a flashlight out, and I just figured it sounds like they can see at night. I don't want to blind them. And I feel like having read a little bit and picking up from people like Leroy, they would say, we stay put, and they come to us. And I kind of had that in mind, and I obviously experienced that, and I had no need to go anywhere, and I would just hear stuff, and yeah, it had me nervous for a while. Just I don't know, when you're alone out in the dark in the woods, for me I feel like it's in our DNA because I'll even now
Oh,
I think
you better believe it. Anybody, you know, is going to get just a little bit nervous in that situation, unless
yeah.
unless you've been doing this for 50 years, maybe like some people have. But it's still it still comes to the point where okay, they are just right over there. It is dark. I don't want to offend them by shining a light in their face, but I know they're over there. But they're also 10 foot tall, or 9 foot tall, or 8 foot tall, and and um,
Hmm.
let's hope we stay free. There's going to be a certain degree of nervousness there. So how long you camped out there for? How many weeks then?
A little over 5 months.
A little over 5 months.
Five
Because
months.
Yeah.
5 months. Now,
Wow.
That's
in
what
the early
shocked me.
going, go ahead,
I
Leroy.
I actually, the last thing I did before I left is talk to Leroy on my way out too, because
Okay.
he'd visit and we'd hang out. I
So
played him.
Leroy, you visited him? You
What's that?
visited him when he was camping out?
Yeah, we'd go out there and visit him off and on. There was others from our group that would go out there, and sometimes there would be two or three of us that would go out there and meet him, and we'd go out there and sit around and drink some coffee with him. Martin would always make us some coffee. He'd make my wife and I some coffee, and we'd come out and we'd sit down and we'd sit there with him for a while. And then like I said, I was still amazed how long he stayed there, and that he always stayed by himself. And that's what's kind of wild. But the things that he experienced there, it's like, how many people during that 5 months do you think got ran out of that campground because of the Bigfoots just during that 5 months? Wasn't there
Most
two or
most
three?
people would have been
I
gone
was
the next day.
I There's a couple times when people just suddenly left, and yeah, I could only guess why because some it might be at midnight.
Yeah.
Um, Now on the flip side, there were not tons. It was a primitive area, and there weren't tons and tons of campers. I'd have a lot of nights where I was alone in the campground, But yeah, there's a few times where I suspected people got scared and left. And I've
Even
heard about that.
even one of our researchers camped out there.
Hmm.
I don't think you was there. I think it was one of the times that you was actually gone. But
Oh.
they was camping. He was camping out there, and had took his boys there camping,
Hmm.
and they come in around him, and he ended up gathering his boys up around midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, and made them leave.
Hmm.
And we laugh at him, but that's how he is. He gathered his boys up, so we got to go. He
Yeah,
said, "Well, someone else is staying out here with us. We've got to go."
that's understandable. And there's just that. If you have one extra adult there, there's that security blanket in that.
Yeah,
I've yet to camp by myself alone, and I keep saying I need to do that. I need to do that. I need to take the next step and do that. But I'll be perfectly honest with you
yeah,
right now. I don't have the guts to do it. So,
yeah. My hats was
I
off
was
to
gonna say,
Martin.
I'm
Off.
not sure you would do that.
huh?
No, I'm not sure that you would do that.
Well,
My hats was off
You
to
we'll,
wouldn't want
Martin
to.
all
we'll eventually
year.
find out. But Martin did it for 5 months. The as your progression went along, Martin, did you have are you even up through the fall? Did you have continue to have regular interactions?
I did. Um, yeah, are we, Leroy, you know what I'm probably thinking, connected to
Yeah,
Edie. I don't know if we should wait for
just
Edie to come on or just kind of a general.
We're gonna
general. Let's
we
just
will.
go.
I communicated with Edie today, and I promised
Okay.
her that we're going to give her the opportunity to rebuff anything you guys say about her tonight. But
Well,
we'll
we
give
have
her
nothing
back
good.
on.
We have nothing but good things to say about
I
Edie.
know that. I'm just kidding on that, but but no. So share what you want, and we can always revisit it when Edie's able to
Okay.
get on the show with us.
There's a couple reasons that I wanted Leroy and Edie is because I
Right.
feel that they shared something very sacred with me that I eventually came to realize. Uh, they're they're like the mob. Um, they don't talk about this stuff. Like you go in the Facebook group, you wouldn't think there's anything going on, and then you might learn differently after talking for a while. There's a lot of people with a lot of experiences, and what I learned was a lot of people that I met in that area feel a benevolent sort of vibe going on. A lot of them, they sort of are protective, and so one time Edie said, "Well, for a while I was hoping I can't get out there, and I wanted somebody to take over gifting to the clan. Would you be willing?" Or she didn't say, "Would you be willing?" She just said, "Is that something you'd like to try?" And yeah. At that, I was, I don't know, having been there a few weeks, I was feeling just good vibes. There's a lot you can realize, I think, from what did not happen. That's the way I like. They didn't scare me. They didn't do this. They didn't do that. You know what I mean? Like if I think of what they didn't do,
Right.
uh, I detected courtesy, and then I started to feel that people like Leroy and Edie might have influenced that relation in that region. Possibly, I
Very,
feel like
very
they
possible. That's a big word too that you just mentioned. You detected courtesy from them, and and
tangible.
that is just that's awesome.
I'll give you one example of courtesy that I experienced more than once. Um, there were some noisy nights with noises of different types, knock type things, flying objects. And when I would go to sleep, it would go dead silent. So like I couldn't believe that. It would just stop when I'm unzipping the tent and just silence. I'd sit there and I did listen to your last or two guests ago. Gosh, what is his name? Uh,
Lynn?
what is it?
Lynn Gasper.
Lynn?
Lynn, yes.
Lynn. Yeah.
Lynn Gaspier?
Yeah.
He said a few things that I've experienced, and he said one thing was, he said in the morning, maybe 5:45, they toss a little object at his tent and wake him up, and I experienced that too, and
Okay.
uh, it wasn't right away. I feel like maybe they felt I was comfortable enough or something. Like they didn't just do that. Like they didn't just hit my tent all the time. It honestly felt friendly to me. So, but I thought it was kind of funny too. But
Yeah.
he said
Not
that, and I was like, no way, they did it to you too. So,
not everything. They'll throw things at
hmm
you or in your direction. Um, it could be. I mean, it could be aggressive. Some people have been. We just the one we got going up this week. We talked about some poor woman got hit in the face with a rock and sent her to the hospital from a Sasquatch. So it's not always, but
Hmm.
a lot of it though is also playful
hmm
tossing things at you. I had hickory nuts tossed at me one night, and I kind of didn't take offense to that because they were hickory nuts. You know, I
yep,
thought, well, and they weren't coming straight; they were kind of looping in a little arch and being tossed.
yeah.
Like somebody pitching slow pitch softball, and I just kind of thought that as a friendly gesture. So, but
I felt the same. Yeah,
yeah,
Yeah, we
I
get that.
yeah.
We get that a lot in another area besides where Martin was at. A different forest is where we'll get a lot of things actually pitched at us.
yeah,
And usually it's just small pebbles that come in and hit in between you.
Yeah.
And normally, what we realized most of the time in those cases is they'll start out small pebbles, and then they'll kind of get larger until they get large enough that you go, okay, they're telling us it's time to go,
Mm.
you know, or they start hitting. If they start hitting your vehicle, you know,
yeah.
they're telling you, okay,
Okay.
it's time for you to move on. But at the same time, they're not really being. I mean, if they wanted to hurt you, they could hurt
Oh
you
yeah.
easy.
Oh yeah. They,
Because our group has experienced numerous things, and where Martin was at, a lot of us has experienced a lot of the things that he did, and he even got to experience more stuff that we hadn't experienced yet. One of the things that Martin was telling me that I really thought was interesting is because we like knowing what their behavior is. But Martin was, when he was talking about them being courteous, he was
hmm
telling me one night about being courteous. And he says, they always let me know when they're walking up. He goes,
hmm
I'll hear them come up, but I never hear them leave. He
hmm
goes, but they're courteous to let you know they're coming in.
yeah. That's
Yeah.
But
that's
when they
branch
leave,
break.
they don't make. But when they leave, they don't make any noise.
Nothing.
No.
And
Nothing.
and I thought, now that's interesting.
Yeah.
hmm
That's interesting that they do that, and because that's how we've learned to do things. We don't go out looking for them. We unless we're looking for new areas. But if we know that they're out there, you can ask Martin. We pull up in a parking lot, pull out our lawns chairs, sit down, and talk.
hmm
And we'll just sit there and have conversations, and we listen
That's
around us. And if they're in that area, they'll come in and they'll let us know.
that's the way I do it. That's the way we do it. Now I will if I have new people, like if I'm up in my research area up in northern Cape Girardeau County, and I've got somebody new that's curious, that's interested, wants to come hang out with us that night. I'll get up there early and I'll take them out during the daytime hours and we'll go hike around the woods a little bit. And I know some of the pathways that are travel ways. And I'm pretty much guaranteed to be able to find footprints at any given time. So I'll take them out. I'll show you some footprints and maybe we'll hear some vocalizations. Maybe we won't, but we, never fails. We'll see tracks and footprints and things like that. And then when you get somebody who's unfamiliar with this stuff and he's staring at a 20-inch foot with 5 toes on it, 8 inches wide, and then 6 feet down the path. There's another 20-inch foot print. A couple of those, and they become believers real quick. Like whoa, and and so so we'll do that. But then come the evening time, we'll just sit around in the parking lot, build a fire, get the lawn chairs out, and talk.
I think that's the way to do it, and
They
I
come.
think it's giving them the ease, and then they
Yep.
learn that you don't have any bad intentions.
They'll
Mm.
come
And I
watch.
think that's why they got with Martin and picked up with Martin so quick,
Yep.
because I believe that's what he was projecting, that he had no bad intentions towards him. He was just curious that they was there, and then the more that they learned that, the more they would push that level a little bit and come in and see him more often.
Mm-hmm.
And then once they got used to you, well, game's on.
Oh yeah.
Because they're going to come in and see you all the time.
Yeah.
They
Martin,
learn
did
your
you?
behavior.
I was
Martin,
sorry.
I'm curious if did you talk to them?
I did very
Do
much.
you,
Eventually, I spoke. That was one thing Edie suggested. I It's kind of weird, but I don't know if I should talk. Should I talk about weird stuff or no?
You
Yeah.
talk about whatever you experience.
no,
I'm not
we
gonna go too weird, but
We can
I
determine. We'll let the audience determine whether it's weird or not. I don't know. I'm not. I mean, there is
right.
so much.
I
I
don't care what you talk about.
I started to. I just sensed that like they could read my mind. Uh,
Hmm.
Okay.
I don't know. That was my and because I mentioned this because the reason that the talking got mentioned was I asked Edie if I should use spoken words when they can read my mind, and
Mm.
just she said I took a lot. She was basically like a mentor.
Right.
Uh, I asked a lot of guidance from her. So that's why she's so integral and Leroy. Um, and so I would speak, I would say things like even I'm going away for a few days. I'll be
Hmm.
back in 2 days. Or anything. I mean, as I progressed, I spoke more to them. I eventually would, um, I'm just trying to think from their perspective. Whether they're here or not isn't really a question anymore. So maybe they'd want to know what I'm doing here. So I would just speak out loud, assuming someone's within
Hmm.
earshot. I'm brewing coffee, uh, and I eventually began a pretty. Um, I prayed for them a lot out loud. I
That's
thanked
interesting.
them. I when I felt that I knew they were there, which I sometimes feel like they were there, but I wasn't sure, so I wouldn't always know. But when I sensed or heard things, um, I would just say, "Hello, it's an honor to hear you. I'm just honored that you would let me hear you. Thank you, bless you," and just things like that. And I said things like that often. It just from my heart, I guess. I don't know. It just felt right.
Hmm.
So,
And
and
that's
uh, sorry.
and that's exactly how Edie interacted with that clan too. And that's why, and when you talk to her, or if you look up her books, she'll talk about that stuff and the interactions that she had,
Mm,
because
unreal.
she had some great interactions, just unreal interactions. And we done the same thing. We'd go out, and while she was out there camping, we'd go out there and stay. And I've camped in that area several times myself and experienced some of it. But yeah, Martin just got because he stayed out there for so long, so many nights in a row. This year, he got to
Right.
really experience a lot of things.
Right. Yeah, I
Now,
don't think that's strange at all. What
no.
Hmm.
you know, the way you were talking to him or telling them that you were going to be gone for a few days and then coming back. And um,
I
I
actually,
think that's what something that I would do. It's like you do with, or I do with my pets at
mm,
home, you know. And so, especially if you were out there for as long as you were,
yeah.
like you said, you know, you were there, and they might want to know what you were there
Well,
when, you know,
well, I
because if you were gone, they might want to know, well, what happened to him, and
Yeah.
so.
that's
I
what I
will.
do. I just talk to them, and same thing
Mm,
as you said, and I'm not any good at imitating a hoot owl or doing a Tasmanian devil yell in the woods. I'm not any good at that stuff,
the
but I
owls.
can talk. I can talk, and the same thing that and I have done that, and I have received communication back, and sometimes I don't. But I
Mm,
want. But the other thing with the talking part is they get a vocal recognition of your voice. So when they hear your
mm,
voice, they know it's you, and they know they've got a
mm.
friendly person
Hmm.
to go visit. So
Yeah, I think they know. I think they know as soon as we pull in the area. If they're in that area when we pull up there, when we get there, I think they know that it's us, and that's when they'll come in and see us.
and they have the in my area. It seems like they've got the some people call them the sentry watchers or the day watchers, and they'll have a
Mhm.
place throughout, certain, and we, and I know a couple of ridges that they generally are on, and because that's where I've had daytime experiences in those areas, and and they're going to communicate with the others that somebody's here,
Mm.
and and um, and if they recognize the voice, you say, "Hey, it's me, it's Martin, I'm back." They recognize that voice. Okay, we know this guy, and and so so nothing wrong with that at all. Now let me. Did you get a chance to see one during all this 5 months?
Possibly.
Possibly.
I There was one day where I was sitting in my chair without my glasses and I saw a dark figure, I would call it, next to a tree. I never ever made an effort to see them once. One time I did. I sat down this is the way I was. I announced to the forest, "I am going to try and see you all now. If you would like to show yourselves, that would be amazing. And if not, I don't need to see you. And I trust you. I feel like you'll reveal yourself when you think I can handle it."
Right.
It's just how I felt. And
Well,
so I did get up and went and got my glasses. I came back, sat back down, looked at the same spot because it did look like something, about the right height, dark, and there was nothing there. It could have been a shadow, but no clear visual.
yeah.
There has been visuals right
Yeah,
there in this spot.
yeah,
Right.
Edie and her daughter had visuals right there in that spot, plus some really good vocals. Got a real good vocal out of there one night, about
yeah.
And the
2 o'clock.
reason, yeah, the
That
reason I
recording
asked
where
that is I've been the last 3 years I've been in the woods a lot, and I'm the same way. I've seen a couple of glimpses, a quick peek around the tree and back. Um, the, can I say definitely? Can I draw a sketch? No, but I'm pretty sure that that's exactly what it was based on all the other activity in the area. Now, Becky, on the other hand, who at this stage in her life is unable to get out in the woods very much, she drives down the road and sees the thing at 15 feet face to face.
wow.
But there's the contrast. But that's so I that's if you see how they showed themselves to you, so. But we know what we're dealing with.
And it, and I want to say one thing about that, because when Martin was saying how he felt like they, they could read his mind. Um, I I got to thinking about that a lot because that's really kind of how I felt, you know, because I maybe didn't get that, vocalization because I was in the car and he was on the side of the road, or she, I don't know, but I felt like we had experienced some nonverbal communication there because I just felt like he was just waiting there for me to cross, and it's just kind of one of those things. I don't think that's off at all with what you're saying. I think
No.
if you feel that way, then I, I believe you.
I actually have reasons why I think that.
Yeah,
Do you want me to share them?
Yeah,
sure.
that's why we're here.
I there's I won't share Edie's story, but she's shared one with me that gave me an idea, and so I decided to think a thought and see if anything would happen, sort of a request of sorts. And I just personally, I know it scares a lot of people, but I love tree break sounds. Um, and you got me thinking in that video I listened to of yours about one of the gentlemen was saying how they felt that they were sending a message to a group of people somewhere where they pushed over a tree.
Right.
And I did have that once where there was campers making a lot of noise and a tree fell right next to them and they didn't notice. I
Yeah.
just thought that was funny. But getting back to the so I said I thought, would you push a tree over? And this was not a daily occurrence. Like full size, there's a difference from like limbs, small trees, and then like big, huge trees. Um,
Hmm.
Maybe 30 minutes later, it happened. And one thing that just I noted was Sasquatch theory. That he said he spoke it out loud and it happened maybe 45 minutes later. Um,
Hmm.
and then
And that was the episode that I was out with him, right?
uh, that was crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We had
Yes,
the
I
tree.
remember
We
that
had
one.
part three of that. We had the tree um,
crazy.
go up and come down upon request. Miguel requested it,
Yeah.
and he answered his request. So the
Well, so we've done the same thing. We've went out and asked for eye shine, and my wife's even just thinking in her head,
Mm.
you know, show us your eyes, and had great eye shine 50 yards from us. That
wow,
Mhm.
three of us stood and looked at it. A guy was looking at it and said something to me, and I walked stepped out into the gravel road and went, "Holy!" And so I tell my wife, I said, "Come here and look." And she walks out and she goes, "Oh my God, I can see both of their eyes," you know.
Hmm.
And they would get real bright, go back dim, get bright again. And this was just looking straight dead into the woods where there's nothing back there. There's nothing around there,
Mm.
you know. And again, and that was just from thinking and kind of saying it. You know, I'd said a little bit and she was thinking it in her head, you know. So, and it wasn't the first time it's happened like that. So the mind speak thing is, I've seen that several times. I'll tell you, the first time I seen it was a teenage girl. A guy played a distressed rabbit call. And as
Mm.
soon as he started playing that distressed rabbit call, she started saying, "Shut it off. They don't like it. They're telling me they don't like it." And this is a teenage girl. And to be honest with you, I wasn't taking a whole lot of thought in what she was saying.
right,
But it didn't take us no time to realize she's speaking the truth. They
yeah,
do not like that. Um, when it comes to throwing rocks, they're not little pebbles. They're not light. They will hit you. They will draw blood, and it's very clear that they don't like that.
Mm.
You know, it's very, you know, and it's like, yeah, she's not kidding when she talks about that she can mind speak with them.
and with that on that note, I've got a buddy that I've been out with several times that has experienced that. I haven't, but but that doesn't mean he's not. And there's something to that in those cases that that people, certain people they get that, and so yeah, and she's like, hey, don't do that. But now, but like LeRoy, have you experienced personally the mind speak, or just within people in the group?
Just people within the
Yeah,
group, and seeing it happen right around me, you
right,
know,
right.
and get to know the people and realize, hey, that this is something that you can't just totally blow out and go, no, that's just totally crazy.
Yeah, yeah.
And what I've learned over the years is don't throw nothing out, no matter how crazy it is, because it might come back. And the more that you're around them, and the more times that you experience, you start questioning and going, is that possible? What is this? Like I tell a lot of people, the more I get into it, the more questions I get. I
Uh,
never can answer any questions, but
Absolutely,
I sure get more questions, because
absolutely. The somebody asked in one of these Facebook pages the other day about you know what are they? Are they this? Are they that? Are they aliens from outer space or what? And and I commented on there. I said my belief is they're a flesh and blood they're a flesh and blood being with capabilities of doing other things.
yeah,
Yeah, but
I don't know.
and we're all still trying to figure that second part out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's just the more that I do, the more questions that I get, and
yeah.
there's things that you can't answer, and I'm sure Martin has learned more so much over the summer that he's going, no, I can't answer whatever everything that they do. It just some things just does not make sense.
Hmm.
So Martin, tell us. Edie asked you to take up that gifting program. Did you do that with the gifting? Tell us how some of that worked out.
I did. Before I forget, I'd like to add to something that LeRoy said.
Okay, go
Um,
ahead.
it's a little. Uh, his wife, overheard. I got goosebumps hearing him tell it because hearing his wife tell it too was amazing. But she described these emerald green glowing eyes, glowing like a light bug. Um, and so I had a friend visiting one night, and I was explaining where I think this may have happened with me, where I looked over and it kind of looked like two big light bugs, kind of apart and kind of dim in my case. And I did go over to where I thought I saw that, and it was probably 9 feet off the ground or so. And so I'm describing to this person, and I said, I'm looking right at it, and I just moved my head, and I swear I saw them go like this. And I person I told said that happened to me, and
Maybe.
they said in that same spot. So I wasn't sure if that's what I saw, but hearing that,
Yeah,
it just wasn't obvious, and they weren't bright, but
right.
and it was, but anyways, um, so yeah, I just decided I sort of found an area that looked good, and brought a bunch of bananas and a jar of peanut butter and a soccer ball, and just left it, and yeah. Then I would just speak to Edie, and I think I checked it in a couple days, and it was moved a little, and then so it wasn't very long. I know some people it's months before anything gets touched, and it was maybe a week or two, and one of the bunches of bananas was peeled, and it was still all together. There was maybe three bananas still on the bunch, and they were peeled, and I was so excited, and I sent pictures to Edie, and she goes, "Sorry, but that's not them." I mean, I'm like, the bunch is still together. The bananas are attached. They're peeled and she's like, believe it or not, raccoons can do that. Because the thing with Edie, is she is one of these people that has to be sure that it's them and not a cougar, a
Right.
coyote, a raccoon, you know? Um, what she told me is when they eat the bananas, they will peel the labels off and the whole peel will be gone and you'll just have that little bunch on the top. Uh, well, that happened. Maybe the next time out, the whole everything the sticker was peeled off, just like she told me, just around the sticker, like the little Chiquita thing,
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
and just the top of the bunch of bananas left. And all right, there's obviously a little more than just that, but enough happened over an extended period of time where it was amazing. Just so doing that, I interacted in that sense. Eventually, once or twice a day. Sometimes I'd go in the afternoon and the morning, and things would be different in between those trips. So
And to back some of that up, which I won't get too much in on what Edie was doing, but most of her stuff, I seen a lot of her containers and things like that, where she'd got a lot of handprints where they took and actually smashed things, and how they would open different things, because they would open it and literally you could tell that something was clearly opened, not just chewed on by some kind of a small animal, but had been opened. And then when Martin showed me the stuff that he'd been doing, was
mm,
identical. It looked just like what Edie had been doing several years earlier with it.
Wow.
So they still acted the same. Um, I think you still experienced Oscar and Felix. We had
yeah,
called them. Edie had named them Oscar and
yes,
Felix because
exactly.
as the odd couple, because one would rip things apart
And
and
then
one was real a lot neater.
all neat, puts the
All neat,
titanium right
just
back into the box.
just like
and
you.
Amazing.
Yeah.
yeah. So Martin was experiencing the very same things that she had, and she was telling him what type of stuff to put out and what to take out, and so it was interesting on how they were still getting the same thing.
Yeah.
Wait,
Because
Very interesting.
here's one thing I found interesting on the gifting, and I am brand new at that, and I've been working with a young man to the west of me who has a family on his property that come in on his property to interact, and um, he's trying to have a farm, and they're trying to, you know, expect him to share some of their produce with them, and which they do. And I said this winter, I said, well, let's set up a gifting station for them, and and you know, get a bright colored bucket, take it up, close to where they're coming in at, away from your greenhouses. And we did that just 3 weeks ago. We went up there and now I got a bucket that seals on four sides. You can seal it, seal a lid on it, like an old laundry bucket or something. But I got a red bucket, and then I put so many apples in there, jar of peanut butter, and I kept the lid on the peanut butter. I opened the lid up and took the little, um, you know, paper thing off, and then put the lid back on. And I put in a dozen eggs because somebody said they love eggs. Well, for 3 weeks, the eggs were not touched. But the second day, oh, and I put a little X glyph on top of the lid of the bucket.
Mm,
The next day, we go up to the gifting station, and the X glyph is taken off the top of the bucket and set on the ground, kept in the formation of the X.
wow.
The lid was taken off the bucket. No food was taken, and it was set back on the bucket unsealed. Well, of course, I have to come home, and I have a job. I've got to work, and so he's communicating with me every day on what's going on. It was about 4 or 5 days into it before they decided to take an apple. And
Hmm.
then another apple, and then another apple, and then hey, okay, they took the lid off the peanut butter. Then hey, they took some little finger swipe in the peanut butter, and then
Mm.
eventually he saw one of the males carrying a jar of peanut butter off with an armful of apples.
Wow.
But this whole time, the eggs, not one of the dozen eggs I put in there ever got touched. But and then a lot of this time, the lid had stayed off the bucket. And the thing I noticed was the raccoons didn't get in there and get them either.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
So
Yep.
it's like once they established that this is my bucket, the coons stayed. I mean, coons had free eggs, and you know how much coons like to lay eggs.
Same thing.
They would, and I had a leftover grapefruit and an orange at the house that
Uh-oh.
evidently nobody at my house was going to eat. So I threw those in
Uh-oh.
the bucket.
Uh-oh. Did they leave them whole or did they smash them?
They just no. Actually, one day they took the orange and the grapefruit out back to the clan or back to home or wherever. And a
Oh.
day or two later, they just brought them back and set them back in the bucket. Nobody wanted the orange and the
um,
grapefruits. So we just went back up this weekend and resupplied the bucket with. We didn't bring eggs this time. I guess they don't want eggs, but yeah,
I
put
think
a
that
new jar of peanut butter.
possibly, I wonder if they have different tastes because from me, they never took peanut butter. I even started to peel the inside thing off and unscrew the lid. There was someone who seemed very, very certain that they would like cinnamon. And
Huh?
I left the jar out and it was opened and taken out and everything. But one thing that really, along with the critters leaving stuff, which I'd have a container half full of nuts wide open in the middle of the forest, just sitting there untouched. Nothing's touching it. It's like they mark it, um, but they never take it all. And just in my experience, I've heard a lot of people warn, do not feed them, don't ever feed them. I didn't I didn't look up advice before I tried it. It's just me doing my own thing. Um,
Right,
uh, but I didn't leave food out every day, and I'm putting treats.
right,
And my understanding is Edie had established an understanding, and they never took it all. And if I did have to leave at times and go somewhere, and there was never any sort of sense of where were you? Why didn't you feed us? Or like in my just in my situation, I feel like they know their treats. It's just a friendly gesture, a little
yeah.
joy in
They've
their
thrived for hundreds of years. They obviously don't
day.
need us to feed them,
I
but
mean, I
but
was
but
thinking if I give them something like this big, it's like a
yeah.
M&M to us, you know?
And I've had people say, "Don't feed them, don't feed them, don't feed them," and I understand that. That's
Yeah,
understandable. But but it's kind of like you say, it's kind of a neat little gesture. And one thing I found out firsthand a few weeks ago, they really like these little cat balls, these little rubber cat balls that will light up when you touch them.
Mhm.
They love to play with those things at nighttime.
wow.
Yeah, if you wanna talk about the gifting, you really need to get Edie on here because she has a lot of things that she could tell you about it, and I could tell
Yeah.
you some of it, but
Yeah,
I'll leave that. That's Edie's thing.
Yeah.
I'll try to.
There's also,
LeRoy.
I was just thinking how I feel like some of you, not me, but some of you might know about dealing with uh, someone might want a gift and but you might want to try to figure out how to do this where you have sort of an agreement, like you don't want them coming in your house to eat or your garage and I've heard somewhere if you're gifting like from property, and I'm not the authority on this, but I have heard put it out in their area. That's just, but
At
I've
least,
never done it.
yeah,
So
I've been told at least on the edge. Put it on the edge. Put it away from your home, far enough away, the edge of where they're coming in at. You know, get it in that situation. You don't want them
And the guy that you're dealing with, that they're on the farm and taking some of his crop, got to put it out there and let them know that hey, this is mine. You can have it over here, but leave this over here alone. This,
Well, what we got going on there, and what he decided, because when they first started, he reached out to me. This is probably about the same time Martin did back in the summer, starting to have these things, and he's got some greenhouses, and he's they're coming in helping themselves to the greenhouse, but they're not taking everything. So he said now he goes when I go in to harvest during the daytime, he says I just get a portion of what they like to eat and I just set it down for them. So that when they come in at night,
Wow.
it's already there for them. And
yeah.
got
Well,
plenty.
I've got one lady in our area that they was doing that. They was going in and they smashed her. She had a fenced in yard, and inside of her fenced in yard, she fenced in her garden to keep her dogs out of it because her dogs was digging up her garden. So she had fenced that in. But she has a male that likes to walk through her yard and walk across that area. Well, he smashed her fence for her garden fence. So
Wow.
she went out and told him, said, "Look, this is my food that's in here for me. Don't be smashing my fence down." And hasn't had an issue since. You know,
I've heard stories like that. I've heard that.
you know.
You just declare, okay, you're
Yeah.
welcome here, you're welcome there. We will share with you, but
Hmm.
don't don't you know? And that's why he asked me at one time. He says, "Should I lock the greenhouse door?" Probably not, because then they'll tear it up.
Yeah. Now,
Yeah.
if they
set,
don't like it, they're just going to tear it down.
set the boundaries. So he thought, well, it'd be a better idea if I just get a portion of the fruit and just set aside for them. And
You
it
know,
works
I,
out
I've
good.
heard a few people, they say, oh, sorry. I
Yeah,
just was going to say, I've heard
yeah.
people
Go
say,
ahead.
just talk to them.
Yeah,
They just say, just talk to them. They can understand you. Just talk and talk to them like a neighbor.
yeah. And they can certainly sense if whether they can understand you fully or not. And maybe the more I'm doing this, the more I'm thinking maybe they can. They certainly understand a friendly voice, and they certainly understand, um, a stern voice, a friendly voice, and things of that nature. So, um, I
Yeah,
was
and
going
if
to
you
say
could get if you can get Edie on, she can tell you how they'll
we're going to
completely
get her on.
understand
Yeah,
what you're telling them. Yeah, hopefully she'll get feeling better and you'll be able to get her on because she
yeah.
can tell you exactly how they'll understand because she would tell them what she wanted and they would do it.
We will
And
definitely
that's
do
not
that.
just doing a tree break and things like that. She would say, "Hey, you got to do this," and they would start doing it. So they very well understood when she was telling them things.
you, is it appropriate for you to tell them the way that you talk about Edie? Are you going to be here with her next time? I'm just,
Oh, I don't know.
okay, well, um, if you might want to just finish this off, but you've mentioned how when you heard something and that she's got bigger.
Yeah, Edie to tell you, Edie is about I don't know. She's less than 5'5", probably 120 pounds, and I've been out with her at night, and if she hears something, she thinks there's something down in the woods, off she will go. She'll head right into where they're at. She has no fear, and yeah, and I say that she's got bigger ones than most guys because
The
she has no
thing is,
fear
she
whatsoever. And
probably goes down and gets her way with them too. I mean, it's because it's just one of those people
Yeah,
that they've got
no
a special
fear.
knack for that. But
That's why they listen to her too.
yeah.
It's true.
yeah,
Yep.
Yeah.
so yeah, we'll push her and make sure that you get her on because
Oh,
you
we've established a contact now. We're definitely going to do that. Leroy, maybe just share,
She's
you know,
amazing.
running the Indiana Bigfoot Research Association Facebook page and that. Maybe just share with us for a few minutes what got you started on that? Maybe what was one of your best early interactions to get you to think, let's
Well,
educate
I
others
got
about this.
started on it. I got into it. It's probably been a little over 10 years now. And Steve Abney created the group a number of years ago. And he was going to have an outing in Indiana. I grew up here. I never believed there was Bigfoot here.
Right.
I thought maybe out west somewhere up in Canada. Indiana don't have that deep of woods. I say that the woods that we're in, when you think you're walking deep into the woods, you're just walking out to the other side of it, because that's about how it is. There's nothing that deep. So I went with him. I called him up. He took me out early in March. Ground was still froze, only thawed in a few places, and we went out and actually found a print. And it intrigued me, but I said, well, he brought me here. And then I spent the next summer, me and another guy spent the next summer looking at tree breaks, looking at tree bends, looking at things that he had showed us to look at. And we're going, yeah, but we're only finding them in certain areas. This isn't natural because we've been finding it everywhere.
Right.
So it got us interested in it. And then within a year or two, Steve is older, can't get out any, and he wanted to turn the organization over to someone, and he just he handed it to me. So really, the organization kind of got dropped in my lap, and me and another guy, we took it and we just ran with it, and the group has grown from less than 100 people to the Facebook page is over 3,000
Right.
now, and we've got a pretty good core group of researchers that goes all over Indiana. I've got researchers in northern Indiana, southern Indiana, all over central Indiana. We do more in central Indiana than we do in northern or southern Indiana, but we're also tied in. We do a lot with the Squatch Man. I don't know if you've ever heard of Greg Yost, the Squatch Man.
I've heard
He's
I've
down
heard
in
of him.
southern Indiana.
I've seen him on some of the other shows here and there. So
Yeah, Greg's a super nice guy. He is one that goes out and talks to them. Um,
Mm.
they interact with him big time. For
I've had
some reason,
experiences with him.
he can bring it. He can bring them right in, and so I mean it just keeps growing. But that's what we're doing. And then we try to go out, and if anybody's calling and having issues at their home, of course we go out and
right.
we try to tell them whether there's something there or not. If we believe there's something there, and try to help them out. Try to let them know that they don't have to be scared. You don't have to be worried. They're not going to do anything to you. You know, they just want you to know that they're there. If you ignore them, most likely they'll go away. They won't bother you. But once they know that you're aware of them, they will push the limit a little bit more.
As our friend Lynn Gasper says, we mentioned to him on a previous program, leave your fears at home. And Martin, you've figured that out firsthand throughout your 5-month excursion camping in amongst them. So um,
Yeah,
I tell you,
I was
go ahead, give me a final
I was
thought, Martin, and we'll wrap it up.
I was just excited when you the way that you spoke about them, and you and gosh, I forgot his name already, and you just said it, Lynn.
Lynn.
When
You're just saying just his. I felt very similar to how he does towards them with
Yeah.
his, and I didn't feel like this in the beginning, but now um, I don't feel it's. I mean, it's much more of like a friendly feeling, if not
Right.
even like family to me.
Right.
Uh, and I know how easily they could just dust me. Like I was in a tent. I wasn't in a camper. I was in a little tent.
Yeah.
They could just knock a tree over, whatever. And yeah, I just really related to that sentiment that you guys had with just in general a lot of things. I was like, wow, and I was really glad that you spoke about that when I was thinking that I'm going to speak. Like you have an understanding similar to just sort of a feeling like I do, you know. he was saying they're not monsters. I mean, he seems really fearless, more than me. I don't think I could stand like he
You know,
described with.
Lynn's been doing this 63 years. He had his first
Yeah.
interaction when he was 6, when he held
Yeah.
hands with one. So, yeah, but, but, and you reached out to me early on in your journey because we communicated a
Mhm.
lot in the summer, not so much since then, but a lot in the early going. You'd ask me questions and obviously
Yep.
Edie
And
and
thank
so
you.
forth. But we just doing what we can. But I was talking to a future guest on the phone this afternoon, and I told him, I said, the Sasquatches give us sanity in an insane world.
Wow. I like that.
And I think you guys can relate to that. They give us sanity in an insane world. Yeah, but
Yes.
there's some truth to that. But Becky, I'll give you a final word and we'll wrap it up.
Well, Martin, thank you for sharing your story. I really did enjoy listening to it. And Leroy, thank you for coming on too and sharing with us. I just curious, Martin, do you think you'll go back soon
I would
to
like to,
spend
yes.
some more weeks?
Yeah. Edie asked me if it feels like home, like when I was there for a week, and I said, but now, yeah, and the people, like you said, in an insane world, this group of people in Indiana is freaking amazing. Leroy, he let me shower at his house. I needed something one day, and I asked him, and he came out because I messaged him, and he was gonna bring me something.
He
I didn't,
probably smelled you
but
at the campground. Said, "You're in here taking a shower."
but just the people are just they're amazing. Thank you, Edie, and I just said in my own heart, I'm not talking to anyone if Edie and Leroy are not both here. And the way this went, Edie wasn't able to be here, but just thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. I really enjoyed it. And I think there is something to be, said about having that feeling, that home feeling and that family feeling. And I'm glad you found that.
Yeah.
So,
We look
folks,
forward to you getting back up here.
we're
I'm
gonna wrap
coffee
this
ready.
up. We've got LeRoy Nail, the director of the Indiana Bigfoot Research Facebook page. Martin Lotsberg, 5 months in the woods with the family of Sasquatch in that area in Indiana. Becky Pepper, of course. We'll get you two guys back on here with Edie, and we'll have it, and we'll focus on all her knowledge and the books that she's written and so forth. It sounds like just a wonderful guest to get. So we'll come back and do it again in the near future, hopefully in 2023. And with that, we want to thank Sean Seaball for producing us and taking care of us. We'll say so long from Cape Girardeau. We'll see you next time on Understanding Bigfoot.